Okay, welcome to Context and Environment. This is one of my favorite classes to teach. We get into a lot of different things in this class. A lot of real practical things, a lot of creative things, a lot of really hands-on kind of fun stuff in this class. And it's very wide-ranging, this class as well. What are we going to get into today? We'll talk a little about what the class is about, talk about empathy, why it's so important to OTs to practice with empathy in terms of what the evidence shows. What is empathy? We're going to define that. This idea of learning through stories kind of ties into empathy. Look at the history of the disabled and disability theory. And a connection with that is this idea of eugenics, what that is, how that relates to the disabled, and these different models of disability. These are the lecture questions. Each week we'll have these lecture questions. Though it's not going to be quizzes like there was back in 300, but again, at least one of these lecture questions per week, maybe more, will be on the midterm exam. And then there'll be some on the final exam as well, these exact questions. So you really need to know the answers to all of these questions as you move forward, the kind of the essence of the lecture. I'll go back to these at the end of the lecture, so you'll have the answers. I wish I would be able to get the answers out of the lecture. Definitely want to know these. I would print these off ahead of time, so you have them there, and you can just write in the answers along with taking notes as we do the lecture content. What is this class about? Really, this class, as much as anything, is really about getting you ready for the next step. What's the next step? It's your level 2 fieldwork this coming summer. You're really going to be real OTs or start to feel like a real OT by the end of the summer. So you start seeing patients on your own with your CI supervision. So in this class, we're getting you ready for that. We're building skills, a lot of real hands-on, tangible skill building in this class, along with the rehab class with Katie. This class will do a lot of FIM scoring, which is levels of assist, modified FIM scores, mobility stuff, treatment planning, team meetings, the simulations, practicums, really kind of practicing as close as we can get to the real thing, what you're going to be doing this summer. Big part of what this class is about is assistive technology, adaptive equipment. Don't really get into the exercise thing in this class, but we do get into compensating through assistive tech and technology. Going to do a ton of that. You're actually going to be making your own assistive device. There is a separate YouTube and all kinds of descriptions on that on Canvas. And then understanding others. That's kind of the second skill that you need. The basic skills in terms of how to assess and treat somebody. And then you'll be able to understand where they're coming from, so you get those really client-centered goals, client-centered care, which is a huge part of OT, and which we'll see pretty quickly is a huge part of being effective as any kind of healthcare provider. Okay, the assignments for this class, there is a separate YouTube video just talking about the syllabus. I don't want to get into that too much, but big things you need to know about is the book assignment. You have to read one book, a novel, or novel-like nonfiction book by the end of the semester. I brought those books. I'll bring those books to the lab on Thursday. You need to choose one by next week, or I'll choose one for you. The adaptive equipment assignment. We're doing simulations of practicums in this class. Prep Camp is that documentary. You're going to have that watched by next week. Again, what is this class about? Hands-on learning. We talk about evidence-based practice, evidence-based OT. This is evidence-based teaching. What the evidence shows overwhelmingly, hands-on is how people learn. You can look at the scale. You really learn very little from what you read and what you hear. Starts to improve what you see, but it's really clicks in 70-90% when you're doing it and writing it, hands-on, designing, participating, simulating, modeling, experiencing, performing. That's what you're going to be doing in this class. If you like that kind of class, kind of like we did in 300, to a degree, you're going to get a lot more of that in this class. Big part of that, hands-on learning stuff. This is not so much the fun stuff, is the simulations and the practicums. There's 4 big sims in this class. These are low-stakes simulations. They're all kind of a lot towards your grade. but they're huge in terms of learning, putting together all these skills that you've been learning in OT school to get you ready for your summer, your level 2. Really, this is as close to the real thing as you're going to get with these sims. Students keep saying this really prepared them well, what they were doing over the summer, the level 2s, the first level 2 and the second level 2. And we'll have student actors coming in and doing that. We'll build you and get you ready for that. That's later in the semester. Practicums, there is a high-stake practicum everybody has to do. It's a home health one. It's not the acute care one that you did with Katie. They're going to be doing more of that with Katie. This one you're doing the home health one. We have a simulated apartment over on Marshall Road up by the mall. There's descriptions of that, directions to Marshall Road, schedule, when you're going. Everybody's going a different week. Well, again, we'll have a student actor over there, an OT who's going to be enacting out the patients, and you'll be assessing that person and learning all your skills and kind of putting them all together. Okay, so kind of shifting here to this idea of empathy. Before we can kind of talk about why empathy is so important as an OT and getting at that client-centered care, let's talk a little bit about what empathy is. Really, it's a complex kind of construct. There's 4 different parts to it. First part is something they call theory of mind, which is kind of inferring. So a part of empathy is understanding other people. And one way we can understand other people is just to observe them closely. Their facial expressions, what they're saying, what they're doing, and kind of you can think, okay, they're thinking this kind of stuff. Example, you go to the airport, you see somebody that's very distraught, or not distraught, but somebody just had their flight canceled. And you see that person, and then the clerk tells them, oh, your flight was just canceled. You can infer from your past experiences yourself or whatever that they're probably upset. Look at their face, they're upset. You're not really feeling their emotions, but you're kind of thinking, understanding, putting together where you think they're coming from. Emotional resonance is you're feeling the emotions of another. Emotional regulation is you're kind of not excessively feeling those emotions, you're keeping yourself a distance. And this idea of empathy, volition, it's a willful act. Empathy is something you do. This is something you are. You can be empathetic at times and maybe not empathetic at other times. It's not so much something you are or you're not, but something you kind of act on. It's kind of an active imagination to understand where somebody else is coming from. This little chart here shows you how it's this 4-step process. Inferring, kind of thinking you understand where the person's coming from, feeling their emotions. Oh, I'm upset. I can feel that they're upset too. Not getting too overtaken by their emotions. A lot of OTs struggle with this. You can get burnout, if you're getting too into your patients. You need to keep a distance. And then motivation. You're motivated to understand the other person, to engage the other person, to see where they're coming from. Kind of what empathy is. It gets complicated. Not going to get real in depth with this in terms of exam questions, but just to give it an idea what empathy is, it's a complicated thing. Basically, it's the idea of understanding where somebody else is coming from. Why do we care about empathy? Why is it important? There's clear evidence that clinicians who practice with empathy and compassion get better outcomes. This is not borderline clear, this is overwhelmingly clear evidence. This is with doctors, this is with nurses, this is with psychologists, this is with physical therapists, this is with occupational therapists. Been studies showing all that. Patients respond better when their health care provider cares, demonstrates care. There's overwhelming evidence about the effects of empathy and compassion on patient outcomes. Decreased cost, decreased burnout. The evidence for greater empathy and compassion in healthcare and outcomes is as clear as hand washing to prevent germs. Empathy is not really the dessert, it's kind of the meal itself. So it's a huge part of effective practice. So you have your skills, you have your empathy. Your 2 big things you want to take with you, as you go out this summer treating patients. OT has been shown to occupational therapists to see their clients as an unfolding story, get better health outcomes with their clients. We'll get more into this semester with this class, really just seeing your patients as a story. This 3-part story, kind of where they're coming from, where they're at, in the rehab when you're seeing them, and this future story of health, envisioning a future story with them. This study by Madeline Fleming really demonstrated that the therapists who are most effective are really using their empathy, really understanding the patient's story. The more skilled you are as an OT at seeing a client's story and view of the world, the more skilled and effective you'll be as a therapist. Patients will not care or respond to your treatment until you demonstrate that you care about them. To see fully through the eyes of another, this idea of the stories, to understand that the context, the environment, the cultural influence, to kind of holding back judgment, to temporarily slip into the shoes of your patient, until clients envision a new future story of health. Context and environment defined to see fully the complex world of another, kind of defining what it's about with this class. The environment refers to the external, physical, and social aspects around the clients while engaging in occupation. Context are the cultural, personal, and temporal aspects of this engagement with occupation. Okay, I'm going to stop this.